Thanks for being here. I'm Lori Sulpizio. I'm a former college basketball coach, former athlete turned leadership professional, and most recently, based on my own personal journey and based on what I see in organizations, it feels like we need to have more open, honest conversations about gender. So let's start off with what I mean by gender. Gender is something different than sex. Sex is a biological and physical representation of being male or female. Right now, we're not going to debate if that's a continuum. I'm going to acknowledge that as humans, we have bodies, and up to this point, the majority of our bodies have been labeled into two categories, male and female. Now, there is the intersex, and there is a bit of a variance with that, but that's another video topic. Gender is our interpretation of being male or female and living that out as a man or a woman. And one of the things that we're going to explore here today is the possibility that gender is completely socially imposed and really just based on a set of characteristics that society or culture has designated as masculine or feminine, and then has assigned these characteristics to males and females to live their lives out as a man or a woman. You might have heard the idea that gender identity and gender expression are different. So gender identity is what you feel internally about being a man or a woman, and gender expression is the way that you live that out in the world and present it to the world. So in this video, I'm going to talk about gender expression, what it means to live out life like a man or a woman. So you might say, wait a minute, isn't gender identity and gender expression essentially the same thing? I'm going to say that no, because one might identify internally with the gender of woman, but then express themselves through man characteristics, dressing like a man, acting like a man, and so on. And so if we believe in the idea that gender is actually something we do, it's possible to feel like something on the inside and then do it differently on the outside because of expectations and social norm. You might have seen videos of people trying to answer the question, what is a woman? There's a documentary on it. It's been floating around the internet, and it's surprising for us all to think about how something that has been so intuitive for so long is now coming under question. I understand the confusion around this, but I think it's coming under question for a good reason. A quick and easy answer is that someone who is a woman is someone who is female with XX chromosomes, somebody with a vagina, uterus, ovaries, produces eggs. But it's not as simple as attaching being a woman to the idea of biology. We clearly have other expectations, norms, and rules around gender and being a woman that have nothing to do with that biology. So let me explain. I'm a biofemale. I have what I would consider female parts. I've birthed 4 children from this body, and from that perspective, I'm a woman. But I can tell you that on the daily, I get called he or sir. I have a much lower voice, so I'm often considered a man when I'm on the phone to people who don't know me. I'm not that tall, but I'm taller than the average woman, so that might be confusing if you see me from afar with my short hair and the way that I dress. And so the question is, if it's so simple and clear to say what a woman is, that someone who is female, well then, why is it so hard for people to recognize me as a woman? I mean, clearly there is something more to our understanding of woman than simply being female with particular body parts and biology. And the other part is, I'm a woman, right? As you would say, but then when I walk into a clothing store to get the clothes, I walk into the men's section because those are the clothes I like. And when I look online and go to shop, I click on the men's category. But wait, I'm a woman, so why are my clothes in a section for men? You can probably see where I'm going with this. Beyond our biology, beyond our bodies, we've got standards and expectations for what it means to live like a woman or live like a man. And that does include how we dress, the way our hair looks, the way our face looks, the way we speak, what we do, what we're interested in. So as we start to explore this a little bit, I hope you can begin to see how random and arbitrary this is in terms of defining woman, the way we've done it so far, and the way we've defined man. And so because of that, when we think about this, maybe our gender of being a woman or being a man isn't something that we are innately, but it's something we do. It's something we do based on the messages and the rules and the standards and the guidelines that we've been given from the time we were born. And many of us follow those rules and exist in a way that conforms to society, saying that being born male means you'll be a man and you'll be masculine and you'll look, talk, dress, and act in this way. And being born female means you're a woman and you'll be feminine and you'll look, talk, dress, and act in this way. So I guess we could ask the question, which part really defines the woman? Is it the being born female in the body and the biology, or is it the way you look, talk, dress, and act? And that's really where we've come into a lot of tension with this gender revolution. The transgender community, the LGBTQ community, the pronouns, being gender fluid, gender non-binary. So let's get back to the idea here, which is that we aren't a gender, but we do our gender. One of the big social pushbacks that we've had recently is that people aren't doing their gender the right way, meaning people are either going against the idea that there are only two ways to do gender, masculine or feminine, and we're saying, no, that's not true. And B, people are saying, wait a minute, to do a man gender, you don't actually have to be a male. I mean, it seems to me, based on how strangers often refer to me as a man, that I do the man gender all the time, and I do it pretty well. So if we start to look at the way that we exist in the world, almost everything we do has been gendered. So let's look at this point light display. If I were to ask you to tell me about this figure walking, you, like most of the people who have actually gone through this particular research and the research setting, would probably say it's a masculinized walk. But it's just a bunch of dots that form the figure of a human. So what is it about this image moving on the screen that looks masculine to you? And why would you identify it as a man? And we've all seen different humans walk in different ways. And we immediately label their walk as like a man or like a woman. Instead of seeing humans walk in a variety of different ways and saying, geez, we're just humans and we walk in a variety of different ways, we assign a gender to it. This is a man walk, this is a woman walk. And you do that by someone's posture and their stride and the way their hips move. I mean, you can get YouTube tutorials on how to walk more like a man or more like a woman. But again, we've seen all humans walk in all ways. So one could argue there is no innate way of walking that is actually specific to the different sexes. So this is where we start to consider the idea that even the way we walk is something that we have learned to do in order to do our gender in the appropriate way. And so we need to consider the possibility that we actually do manness and we do womanness. And this is reflective of all the categories in our lives that are labeled for men and women and direct us in that way. So as we engage in those categories that mean man or mean woman, we're actually doing a stylized set of behaviors or characteristics that we have learned. A lot of the ideas I'm sharing here come from the scholar Judith Butler and similar academics and scholars who believe that gender is a social construction. And this means that our idea of being a man or being a woman is something that comes from society and culture and is not innate at all. If we think about all the ways that we're presented with our gender appropriate rules, it definitely seems like gender is something that's imposed on us. And we then agree to bring it to life in a performing way. I mean, think about the way you style your hair, if you do or do not wear makeup, the way you talk. And from birth, our parents put us in certain clothes, gave us certain toys to play with, told us to act a certain way. Boys got to be rough, play with trucks, because they're allowed to, and they're encouraged to be rough and play with trucks, where girls are sweet and nice and gentle because they're encouraged to be sweet and nice and gentle. So from birth, we have these messages that we then carry out because we realize very clearly as kids how we're supposed to do our girlness and our boyness. And it can be taken to such an extreme that if you do the other and get into a non-conforming pattern around your gender, you get teased, bullied. You're told, hey, little girls don't do that, act like a little girl. Hey, little boys don't do that. Think about the label of tomboy. I mean, I was certainly called the tomboy when I was a kid. It's a little girl who's sporty, likes to get dirty, play in the dirt, play with rocks. The fact that we have a label for that girl that relates her to being a boy shows that there are rules. Who says that being sporty and wanting to play with dirt and trucks has to be a boy thing anyway? One of the things that people ask is, well, aren't people who are born women and born men just expressing that out? And what Judith Butler and the other post-structuralists would say about this is that you're not necessarily born a man or born a woman, but you're born male and you're born female, and you become a man and you become a woman based on the rules and expectations of gender. And this is where we start to see the difference between the biological sex that we're born with and the way that we live out our life. But how does this happen? Consider our parents choose a name for us based on styles of names that are typically associated with masculine or feminine. Zach, Steve, John, Michael, Stephanie, Jennifer, Christine, Tiffany. Boy babies get dressed in blue, which is just an arbitrary color that's assigned to boyness. The toys you get to play with, the messages you get about how you're supposed to be, all these are gendered. Interestingly, many people who are completely against this idea that gender is socially constructed, and people that think we know exactly what a man is, we know exactly what a woman is, and people that don't think that being a man or woman is an idea that we're presented and then lived out, are the same people who see a female who looks like a male and calls them he or sir. So we have to acknowledge that there's an element of being a man and being a woman that has nothing to do with our bodies. Because it's rare you see a stranger out on the street naked. So instead, you're interpreting their manness and womanness based on a set of arbitrary assigned social factors. The way they walk, their posture, their dress, their hair, and then you make a judgment and label them as man or woman. So I offer this idea to just invite a little more space for the complexity that is gender and sex, and actually help us think about the way that we live our life out and the gendered way with which we might have been told this is how to do it. And I think about my own opinions and ideas on this topic. And actually, clearly defining man or woman in such strong categories, I don't actually think that category is as critical as we're making it. I don't think we need to go around gender policing each other. I am one, though, who believes in the human body, and I think it's very important that we have an understanding of the different kinds of human bodies, and that we have some way of capturing those different bodies in categories purely for the purpose of research and understanding related to medicine and healthcare. I think you're going to find that most people, even in the LGBTQ and trans community, wouldn't disagree with that. And I understand, and I want to acknowledge that there are complex issues related to being male and female, being labeled man or woman, specifically considering how we set up social spaces like bathrooms and locker rooms and prisons and participating in sports. I think we're really far from learning everything we need to learn about this issue, and we need to be more open to understanding the nuances and complexities in order to come to a conclusion about those issues. So what we all need to be is available and willing to have this conversation. We need to stop canceling each other out because we're asking questions, but we need to be open. And really, we've been following these gender rules forever, so I understand that it's confusing. And if you weren't a women's studies major, you probably didn't read Judith Butler or ever were exposed to the idea that gender could be a social construction. At the same time, I understand we do have bodies as humans, and there are some clear differences and separations in those bodies. So we have so much more to understand here. In order to move forward in a productive, healthy, and connected way, we have to stop canceling the different groups that try to speak to this issue. So I hope that at least this got you thinking about the idea of doing man and doing woman as opposed to being man and being woman. And before you completely shut it down because it's unfamiliar and it's a little contrary, I want you to again think about the way you live out your life, the way you do your life. Aren't you clear about how you're supposed to do manness and womanness? Isn't it really obvious to you where you're supposed to shop, how you're supposed to dress? And haven't you witnessed those people who have violated those rules and have been gender nonconforming, like I would say I am, and the consequences, the teasing, the bullying, the funny stares, the misrepresenting? So, we just want to be more open. Thank you for your time. I know it's valuable. I know this is a tricky issue. I know it hits upon a lot of tender spots, and I get it. I'm grateful that you're here, that you're listening, that you're open. I want to validate and see every single person that has hung in there with me in this video, whatever your beliefs are, because I think we need to make a space for those beliefs. We need to make a space for all of our differences and the different way we live out who we are in the world. Because at the end of the day, don't we just want to show up and live out in the world in a way that feels true and authentic to us? I think that's the goal. If you find this video and these topics helpful, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. It's useful to me to feel like our community is growing. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.